Hello, everybody. Randy Patterson here again with Boomerocity. And boy, do I have a fun interview for you. You're going to want to watch this from beginning to end because it's just chock full of good, wholesome, fun, and funny stories. And it's with none other than Bruce Belland, who is one of the co-founders of the first really big boy band called the Four Preps from the early 60s. And so with him, I mean, gosh, the musical history and the icons he got to sit with were huge. And he memorializes this in his new book called Icons, Idols, and Idiots of Hollywood: My Adventures in America's First Boy Band. If there's a Forrest Gump of the entertainment business, and I'm not the one that's coming up with this line, it's been said of him before, but it's true, then it would be Bruce Belland, because he's been at some key parts of not only rock and roll history, but television history as well. And boy, the stories he tells just in this interview are great. But you're going to want to get this book, because I got to have an advanced read of it, and I had to read it fast ahead of this interview. But rest assured, I'm going to be going back and reading it a lot closer, and probably kicking myself that I didn't get to before, because there's going to be other nuggets that I wish I could have asked them about. So trust me, order the book, especially after you watch this interview. So without any further ado, here is my first interview with the great Bruce Belland of the Four Preps. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care. Hello, Bruce.
I'll bet that's Randy.
It is I, the one and only.
Good to meet you.
Likewise. Can you see me at all?
I can see you just fine.
All right, good deal. I hope you don't mind that I stole a few book covers while you weren't looking.
I thought I recognized. I thought I recognized that in the back. God, I like you already, Randy. You're
all right. Sucking up will get me everything, right? So
that's right. It'll get you everywhere, baby.
Well, man, thanks a million for taking the time to meet with me. This is truly an honor and a thrill for me, because of all your contributions to the music landscape of this country. And thank you for that.
Oh, how nice. What a nice way to start the conversation. Thank you. It's amazing. I'm going to be 87 in a couple of weeks, and here I am having more fun than I think I've ever had with my career, frankly, because I'm the last prep standing. All the other guys are gone. The only way I can reminisce is write a book and tell all you guys about it. So,
wow. And I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did, man. That's precious history there, and right up my alley. I love it all. And I got the PDF of the book a little late, so I couldn't read it as thoroughly as I wanted to, but I did a good scan of it. So hopefully my questions will be somewhat intelligent. I'm hoping, even for me, I'll try
to get the same kind of answers. Let's just see what happens.
Well, it's kind of hard for me to read it on the short bus, So.
Yeah, really.
So before we get into that, how is the post-pandemic world treating you? Are you back to your old normal, or are you having to create a new normal in this world?
I've had to create a new normal. The third version of the third incarnation of the Four Preps that I formed in 2007 after we did the big PBS special Magic Moments. We stopped touring in 2019, as the rest of the world did, because of the COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So for the last 2 or 3 years, the book I've been trying to finish for 8 years, I had no choice but to stay home rather than going out on tour and getting warm fuzzies from all the retirement communities. I finished the book. And since then, we've lost 2 of the guys who were in that third group of ours that worked until 19. So this is a way I'm hoping that's going to lead. The book is a way to, at the very least, Q&As with people around the country. We thought about doing some Zoom sessions with retirement communities down south. When that 2007 to 2019 version of the Preps, we did 25 to 35 retirement communities in Arizona and Florida for about 7 years.
Oh, wow.
So I've got an enormous audience down there that I'm hoping I can zoom into. My point being, to answer your question, no, I haven't gone back to pre-COVID. I don't think that's possible. I may find 3 other guys to do it again. But right now, my outlet is this book and talking to people about it like you, and reminiscing and remembering what a lucky guy I've been.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I couldn't even get past the first few pages of of all the plugs that you got. I mean, the names of
I know.
people you got, that alone was worth the price of admission right there. I mean, golly, I kept looking at these names and go, dude, man, that was amazing.
I must say some friends really came to the cause. They really rallied around me. Bill Medley and Nancy Sinatra,
Oh
Pat
yeah.
Boone. I mean, it was great. You know, some of these people I haven't talked to in a while, but a lot of them may not remember me, but they sure remember 26 Miles. So, you know, it's been a great experience getting back in touch with some of those people.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine. And I mean, those people alone are also, icons of our culture and,
Oh,
in all the areas of entertainment and such. So I saw in the book where you, forgive me if you detail this in the book. Like I said, I had to do a very quick read. So, my feeble mind didn't grab everything maybe as it should, but in there you mentioned that because I find this a lot. I mean, it was this way with Elvis and so many other artists that they were raised in church, and you mentioned that and church affected their music. You mentioned you were raised in church and the son of a pastor and such. Do you mind if I ask what kind of church was it? I mean, was it a big denomination, an independent, or what kind of background was
my
that?
father, my father was a very serious seminary student in 1920, and he attended the Moody Bible Institute,
Hmm.
which is a very fundamentalist, evangelical oriented institution,
Hmm.
and went there and ordained when he got out first as a Lutheran,
Hmm.
and the rebel in him immediately came to the surface because he said, I didn't like being told by some office in St. Louis how am I supposed to conduct my church. So he became an evangelical church, if you will,
Right.
Jefferson Park Bible Church in Chicago, which
Oh,
is a Lutheran, a Catholic, or Episcopal. It's a fundamentalist Christian church.
right.
And when he got to West Hollywood, he formed he didn't form, he took over a congregation that had been there for 50 years, 2 blocks down from the Sunset Strip, for the West Hollywood Community Church. And
Ah.
again, we had Baptists in the congregation, we had Lutherans, we had Episcopals. And every now and then, when my dad would make a good point during a sermon, he'd say, can I get an amen from the Baptists? And all the Baptists would go, amen. And all the Lutherans would go, oh my God. And of course, my dad, from the time I sang my first solo at age 4 in church, of course,
Mhm.
I wanted to be a singer. My dad was determined to make me a gospel singer. My mother had been quite a well-known radio gospel singer when he married her, and of course, she wanted me to be a singer, period. He wanted to be a singer for Jesus. And so a conflict started, as you know, in the book that I take 400 pages to resolve.
Well, church has always had such an influence. Church music has always had an influence on secular music, and
Oh,
there's
yeah.
always
Oh,
that
yeah.
ebb and flow. And in fact, a friend of mine and I were talking about just recently how Jimmy Swaggart used to preach against syncopated rhythm, and I just wondered what kind of rhythm he had with that hooker he got caught with. But that's a whole nother story. So
Well, but it don't rim shot.
rim shot, yeah. I missed
Well,
my calling, Bruce. So,
yeah, we're a little late, folks. Stick around for the second show. Um, I'm going to tell you a quick story. Ed Cobb was in our group, our original bass, my best friend from age 10. And Sunday nights, after our congregation had its evening service, 20 of us would pile in the Sunday school bus, and an adult would drive us down to the St. Paul's Baptist Church at 102nd in Maine in Watts. An all black congregation, a Baptist church. They had a 40-voice choir, and
wow.
it was such a compelling musical program that the top rock station in town, KFWB, carried their church service from 10:30 to 11:30 Sunday nights with all the gospel sing. I'm so glad
Yeah.
that Jesus lifted me.
Yep.
Well, Ed Cobb sat there along with me night after night, absorbing all that. And they were so cordial to us, this congregation. They knew we were fellow Christians and come on in. He became very well known for producing black oriented, if you will, black themed music.
Mhm.
Dirty Water with the Standells, Brenda Holloway, Every Little Bit Hurts. Of course, Kenny Lester's Love Letters, which is the epitome of gospel. Ba-dum, bum, bum,
Mhm.
bum.
Mhm.
So that influence in church, as you said, blends in with what you're going to do pop wise.
Yep, absolutely. I came from a little bit different but similar background. I was raised like Elvis was in a Pentecostal denomination, so
Okay.
it got real lively. We didn't have snakes, but we had everything but, it seems like.
Did you
So,
ever have anybody speak in tongues?
oh yeah, I heard that all the time when I was going. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it always scared me when that happened. So it was,
Oh, me too.
yeah, I was just like, whoa, and then when
Yeah.
in my first year of college was at a small denominational Bible college, and the only tongues I was really interested in was the ones I would get on dates, so
Yeah, yeah.
so
That's awesome. We're going to take 3 days to do this interview.
that's
We
right.
got so much in common. This is crazy.
And pray that the interpretation would be really long before it would come back around. So anyway, I'm getting off track here, but where I loved hearing that in your book. And did you feel that any of your, because you wrote a bunch of songs that you and the guys, did you ever feel more times than not that that gospel music, whether it was from your church or from the black church that you guys visited, how do you feel like it impacted your music that you wrote? Excuse me. And if so, how much, and specifically maybe which songs you felt like it was heavier than most?
That's an interesting question. I'm trying to think of the things that the original Preps did, which of course is what this book is about, not the group that originally recorded on Capitol. One of our highlights of our concert shows and in our album as well was a song called "Swing Down Chariot," which Marv Ingram, our high tenor, what a voice!
Mm-hmm.
Marv was a boy soprano with the Mitchell Boys Choir. He sang in Bing Crosby's movie "Going My Way." Now he's our high tenor in the Preps, and he could sing the pants off of spiritual. So that definitely, when we got into rehearsal with "Swing Down Chariot," Ed and I, who had been doing this since we were 10, got the gleam in our eye, and it felt great. As far as any of our pop hits that I wrote, I don't think at that point, later on in my life, when I wrote some songs that had more of a, if you will, gospel or spiritual thing to them. Willie Nelson recorded one, the Mormon Choir recorded one.
Yeah.
That drew much more as a guy in my 50s and 60s on what I had grown up with. When I was a pop, if you will, pop star in my teens, I was too busy being a pop star to really give much thought to deep spiritual, meaningful insights. I just was not my bent.
Yeah, when we're young like that, we tend to not think in those terms, and sometimes I still don't, but what your book is chock full of so many interesting stories. I mean, I just couldn't even begin to pick. I mean, I wanted to. You and I could talk for hours and hours on this thing, but so I had to narrow it down, obviously. But just out of curiosity, before I kind of touch into any of them, is there a particular story that you might like to share that comes from the book that you would use as maybe a calling card for people who hear this interview later, would say, yeah, I like that story, I want to get the book?
Okay, well, my editor asked me to do it. Pick the 10 best stories. Well, there's a 400-page book with a lot of stories. I would say if you're interested in American pop culture from the inside, if you will, from Hollywood, where a kid witnessed it from age 10 on and delivered newspapers to movie stars and ended up being involved in things like Ozzie and Harriet and a boy band called the Four Preps, and being mentored by George Burns, and being in Gidget with Sandra Dee, and making a TV commercial with Annette Funicello, and touring with Ricky Nelson, and getting mobbed by hysterical girls. This may be your book.
Might like
I can't
it.
get that any shorter. Oh, Dick Clark and American Bandstand and Ed Sullivan. I forgot.
I think I've heard of those guys. So, I mean, even now, when you think back on your life and all those stories that you've shared in the book, I mean, do you still kind of go like, wow, is that really me? And did I really get to experience that?
My editor, who I owe him a lot, as any writer does, a good editor, but he said, are you aware of how many times in this book you use the word lucky? And I said, I know. I'm seeing the opening statement. I said, you're going to take a look at how serendipitous and just plain lucky
Mhm.
my life has been. One reviewer called me the Forrest Gump of show business. I keep getting dropped in the middle of these events that I had nothing to do with. It wasn't so any prowess or what of mine. I just happened to deliver newspapers to Gene Kelly, or sneak into Cyril's backstage and get befriended by the Mills brothers.
Wow.
It just kept happening. But then I've had people say, yeah, but you were like a sponge and you were all over trying to absorb all these things. And when I was a young kid trying to be a writer around 13 or 14, I read a comment by Mark Twain. He said, be an observer, watch everything, notice it, take notes of it, remember it. If you have to write it down, remember. So when I'm doing the Edsel show with Frank Sinatra on one side and Bing Crosby the other, I'm noticing and I'm writing down and I'm remembering and running down and putting notes in my dressing room. But luck had so much to do with it. I have to tell you, it's first of all, as a kid of 4 years, a 4-year-old being a singer in Chicago, what does that mean? At 10, my family moves to Hollywood within the shadow of Capitol Records. I mean, is that luck? Well, I had nothing to do with it. It
Yeah.
just fell on me.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, I feel like the right things happen at the right time for anybody who is willing to let it happen, and
Oh, yeah.
have the eyes open, and your eyes were open, your ears were open for it, and you had the heart and mind to absorb it all and leverage it for what it was worth.
Uh-huh.
Um, one thing I'd like to ask you is, of all the songs you guys recorded, um, I'd be curious to know if there's some unique stories you might have of any particular songs that maybe, fans might really like to hear, that would be like, wow, that, never heard this one before. And that's very unique, very, maybe funny, very fortuitous.
I got it. I often get asked all these years later by record buyers, radio listeners on Sirius, if you will, what is that amazing high sound that comes in on the second chorus of 26 Miles?
Mhm.
If you remember, the first goes da 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 boom 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 diddle, then the next time diddle
Mhm.
well, we recorded the basic track of 26 Miles without that sound, of course, and we were getting ready to release it, and our producer, Voyle Gilmore at Capitol, who recorded somebody named Frank Sinatra and
Yeah.
Al Martino and Kesar, he said, I want a little spice change, a color change for the ear in that second eight, because the melody is sort of monotonous, doodly boom, boom, doodly doodly over and over, something to perk up the ear. Well, Plas Johnson, the sax player in the Wrecking Crew, happened to be near that by hearing our conversation, came over and said, I got a little sister. She's only 17, but she can sing so high, only an angel can hear it. Maybe she could think of something. Well, said, let's try it. We called the 16-year-old girl to the Capitol Tower the next day. She's trembling. This is Studio A, where Sinatra, of course. And he plays the song for her through once. And we got this nice, buoyant, kind of summery sound. And he says to her, now, Gwen, summer, think the beach, think a beautiful day, think girls and guys in bathing suits on the beach, and sing whatever comes in your mind. We play the record, the first eight go by, we're all in the booth leaning forward with our hands clutched. She gets to the second half and here, but it's 2 octaves higher than that. I have never heard, none of us, we've got musicians, producers in this booth, have ever heard a human voice sing that high.
Wow.
There was somebody years ago named Nima Sumac who had a 5-octave range, but Gwen, it dazzled us. And so we said, that's it. That's the sound. Can you come back tomorrow at 8 o'clock? We'll put it on tape. We got it. We solved the problem. She goes away. She comes back the next night. We get in the studio. Everybody knows. They've all heard the news that we found the magic elements for this second eight. She puts the earphones on. We get to the second chorus. She can't remember a note. She can't remember a note she sang.
Oh, no.
All of us in the booth are turning what? Our arranger conductor, the fifth prep, if you will, Lincoln Mayorga, doesn't say a word. He gets up and goes out in the hallway, strolls into the studio, walks over to the piano and plays, and we got it. Oh my God, that's it. We laid it down. I'm convinced was part of what made that record. Well, what happened? Second part of the story. So now we've got that. We love it. It was so low tech in those days, Randy, that we were out sung on a couple of passages by Gwen. Her voice covered our lyric, and he loved the lyric about water wings and a guitar. He said, I don't know what to. He said, I got a crazy idea. What's that? Could you guys ever sing over yourself? The basic rap, just put your four. We mean different parts? No, no, no. The same four parts, exactly the way you sang them the first time. Well, let's try it, including the solo, which is very difficult. When
Mhm.
you got the earphones out, you're trying to sing with yourself from the. You
Yeah.
better phrase it just right. So we went in and dubbed it over again. And since then, music historians have said that kind of began what they call the California sound, that very heavy harmony, sunny kind of
Yeah.
Beach Boys,
Yeah.
Eagles, if
Yeah.
you will. And we stumbled on it by accident. I mean,
Wow.
it was history making, and we didn't even know it.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I like your phrase about being the what was it, the Forrest Gump
Of show business.
of show
Yeah.
business. Yeah. Well, I was it's funny that you say that because when I was, going through your book, I was thinking the same thing. And I've used that phrase on someone else, which was the late saxophone player for the Rolling Stones, Bobby Keys. I told him he was the Forrest Gump of rock and roll, and he just thought that was hysterical. But you guys, I mean, you were just everywhere, and just like you said, it's not just music, but was in the other areas of entertainment. Like one of the things I got from it. Well, before I get there, let me do this. I'd like to ask you, if you would, on as far as the music industry. I mean, you were there in those innocent days of rock and roll, which some people might think is a contradiction in terms, innocent and rock and roll, but I think it was then. And, all the great harmonies, all the great, wholesome songs. There wasn't anything to be embarrassed about with what was being sung then, or controversial or anything like that. But you've witnessed just all sorts of sea changes in the music business from then until now. And I was just curious, from your perspective, what are the best and the worst changes you've seen in the music business, especially maybe as it would reflect on in your book?
Well, I'm admittedly not objective, but to me, the most glorious thing, I I'm not going to be lie to you. I like hearing my voice. I like hearing it over the radio and on records, but I like it a lot more when it's got three voices wrapped around it.
Mhm.
So harmony to me is what music that I enjoy is about.
Mhm.
But I listen, and used to hear guys my age say, "Oh, well, these groups these days." Hey, I'm telling you, I listen to Boys to Men. I listen to some of these groups. Are you kidding? Listen to these kids, and they're all doing it out of their heads. I mean, so I'm not as likely or as inclined to put down everything contemporary that's happening. I think Taylor Swift is a giant genius. My two daughters had a very popular band in Europe for years, and they've learned to appreciate all kinds of music too. I must tell you, however, I could lose some readers on this, but I cannot. I cannot. I had an interviewer say, "What do you think of rap music?" I said, "I've heard rap and I've heard music. I've never heard rap music." To think that ASCAP or BMI gives royalties to somebody for writing a melody that goes, it's
Mhm.
not a melody. Pay him for lyrics. Okay, he wrote some lyrics, but I just don't get that. My daughters, we don't agree on everything. They say, Dad, but you listen to some of the poetry, some of the social commentary and rap and hip. I don't even know the difference between hip hop and rap. They
Yeah.
tell me there's
Yeah.
a difference. But that bothers me just as an old fashioned guy I mean, the second thing other than lyrics I relate to was a sweeping melody. Ah, dee, da, 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 and I don't get so the good is that there's still good groups around, the Taylor Swifts of the world and harmony groups. The bad news is to me is I wish kids would take time also to listen to some of the really good harmony. To me, it's all about harmony.
Yeah, I agree. How about do you like the new technology in recording compared to when you guys were recording in the beginning?
Well, yeah, how about the fact, Randy, that we had to overdub again because her voice drowned our voices out? I mean, they'd fix that in 15 seconds now.
Auto
They
tune, yeah.
artificial intelligence would
Yeah.
create the phrase. You wouldn't have to have Gwen come in.
Huh.
Well, it's things change, and I, for a while I was getting together with a bunch of guys of my vintage, most of whom aren't here anymore, but at a deli, I got so tired of these old guys grousing, "Oh, the crap they have these days. You see these shows on," man, try and keep up with it and see what's good about it and see if you can do it yourself or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm going to run some names by you that you mentioned in your book, and they're not going to be in sequential order or chronological order like you had in the book, but I'd love to get your thoughts of it because, like you said, you're kind of the Forrest Gump there of the industry, and just the people that you connected with, come in contact with, as you guys were stars yourself. And then as you got, away from the music business and into TV and such, you still kind of had your fingers in there. And I'm just going to drop a couple names from different areas and
Okay.
get your comments. And if you want to share stories, go right ahead. But first at the top of the list, because it's who I grew up listening to, Elvis Presley. I know you got a great Elvis story in the book.
Well, I remember watching. We all ran home to the one family of our, when we were in high school. One family had a TV set, so we knew Elvis was going to be. We were from a very low income neighborhood, and we watched Elvis. And I remember thinking, wow, has everything changed? Never dreaming that later in life we'd cross paths. And to jump way ahead, later in my life, I wrote a song called "What Would I Do Without My Music," which is about, you may be down and out, but as long as you've got your music, you'll survive and get through it. And Elvis heard it, loved it, was scheduled to record it, and died 13 days before the session at which he would have recorded that.
Wow.
But in the meantime, when he got the demo and liked the song, I had gotten it to Elvis through a woman that I had known for a long time as a friend, who was now part of Elvis's group, Entourage. She showed it to Elvis. He liked it. She called me one night and said, he likes the song. He wants to record it. He's going to do it with a gospel choir, which I can just hear. It would have been fabulous. I said, so he likes it. She said, yeah, hold on. Next voice I hear on the phone is Elvis saying, I like the song, sir. I think it's a really good song, and I'm going to record it. And so that was about it. I think 8 or 10 words with Elvis, but with Elvis. And of course, as he passed away, people have recorded it. For some reason, it's caught on. I guess I know why, because the theme of it is, if you're down and out, don't give up. Let your music, revive your soul and move on. 70, at last count, there were 70 choral groups on YouTube that have recorded it.
Wow.
What would I do without my music? It's become the theme song of graduating classes and glee clubs and choirs in college. So that's my Elvis story.
Wow. I know. I mean, in the book, you say that, you wrote it during a downtime for yourself. So, I mean, it's very.
Well, you really did read it, didn't you? Yeah.
I read as much as I could, as quick as I could. So,
wow.
but it's so reflective of, and really one of the reasons why I do what I do, Bruce, is music is so important. I mean, it touches it. The people writing it, it comes from their very being, even if it's repetitive lyrics. It's a part of them. It's their sweat and blood. It's their heart and soul. And just like that song, when you wrote it, you went from a nice home to a little apartment, crowded apartment, and that song come to mind as you're coming home one night. And that just, that's so symbolic of what music is to both the creator and the listener, and why I do what I do. And I'm thankful for guys like you that are recording it, and then telling the stories about it. That's huge.
Well, that's Dem's mighty nice words. Thank you. I tell you, I got to give credit to that little waitress who gave me the title of that song.
Yeah, I remember
read
that.
it in the book.
Yeah.
So that's nice to hear. Thank you for that. That was an important moment in my life, that whole song and what it represented. And of course, as I think I may have written in the book, if Elvis had recorded, I'd be writing a book from the south of France.
That's right. Yeah, I think I remember Mylon Lefevre saying that he bought a Corvette or something when Elvis recorded one of his songs, and
yes,
that was back in the day.
Well, did you read the Corvette story in the book?
No, I missed that one.
Okay, the first royalty check I got, we were on tour in Detroit, and I went to a local Corvette dealer and bought a new Corvette for cash off the floor. It was $3,664.11. And my royalty check was for $4,011.
Wow.
So The bank called the Capitol Tower. They okayed the check. The boom, and I drove it home from Detroit after we finished the fair date.
How cool. So another person I wanted to ask you about is, you mentioned him earlier and you were on TV with him, and that was Ricky Nelson. Yeah. Now you what was on the TV program, Ozzie and area. I said that backwards. And tell that story, or some insight into your relationship with Ricky.
All right. Well, I actually met the Nelson family, with whom I became very, very close over the years. But I said in the book, I was used to delivering newspapers to celebrities in Beverly Hills. Now and then I'd see one come out of the house, but I wasn't used to a celebrity standing naked next to me in the locker room with the boys singing Hollywood High, and there was the naked David Nelson. So we got talking. He was the quarterback on the junior varsity. I ran on the track team, so we were next to each other in the locker room, got to know each other, and ultimately, a couple of times I'd walk up the few blocks from the campus to where their house was at Camino Palmero, shoot baskets, and maybe, hang out for a little while, and then hitchhike home to West Hollywood, to the lower end section. Through David, I met Ricky. And Ricky and I hit it off immediately, because while David and I knew each other and were friendly, David didn't have any musical instincts or interest in it. And so the minute I saw what Ricky was up to, and he knew what we were trying to do with the preps, we just locked together. And ultimately, when he started to sing on the show, Ozzie called our manager and said, "We need a backup chord." Ricky loved everything about Elvis. When Elvis showed up on television with a hand-tooled leather guitar cover with his name on, Elvis Presley on it, 5 days later, he had one. Because when you're Ricky Nelson, you can tell Daddy what you want.
That's
and the
right.
prop, he'll get it, bring it to you. If you want the drum set, boom, the next day it's in his living room, So we began appearing on the show as his backup singers. And interestingly enough, a lot of people thought we recorded with him on his records, backed him. Capitol would not allow it. They said, "We don't want you guys to become known as the Jordanaires. That's not what your career is about." So when he was going to record a particular song, we'd run it down in our rehearsal bungalow on the movie set there. And we would sing into a tape recorder the parts that we thought would be best behind him for Traveling Man or whatever, that he would take to the studio, and the union singers would come and say, "Oh yeah, here we go, boom."
Yeah.
So we did the show for 2 seasons as the 4 preps, and then our schedule got so busy that we couldn't. But during those first 2 seasons with the preps, we actually made musical history. Before we started to have hits, we did free assemblies all over Los Angeles. Free. We'd call a school and say, "It's a clean show. You can ask Hamilton High." We did a show there. We did it at Brian Wilson's high school. So one afternoon, we were packing up the studio to go do an afternoon assembly at a high school, and Rick came by. I said, "Rick, come on with us." He came with us. He was standing backstage. He had not sung in front of an audience yet. He'd sung on the set in front of 20 stagehands, but that's no big. These were 700 teenagers. He was off stage. Glenn surprised him and said, "We're going to bring our buddy Ricky Nelson out. You like that?" Well, of course, we ran off, and Ricky started through the door. We grabbed him and literally bodily carried him back on stage, set him in front, handed him the guitar, and he looked around. Now they're screaming. All the girls rushed to the stage. So they're 20 deep against the stage, wanting to reach up and touch Ricky Nelson. We finished the song and barely got out of there with our lives. We had to work our way through the crowd to our car parked outside the auditorium. I lost a handkerchief. I lost a necktie. I mean, they were going crazy. We had no idea. We had never been on stage, nor had Ricky, as a teen idol. He was the first teen idol, but this was the very beginning of it. And in this car on the way back, we're higher than a kite. We're high-fiving and screaming and hooting and hollering. And then we'd all get quiet and kind of get stunned and look at each other. Then I'd make contact with Ricky. We'd break up again. And I say in the book, we all realized at that moment, whoa, something's happening to our buddy. This is going to be one hell of a ride. Yep. And then we took on that national tour where 35,000 screaming girls in the first arena that we did, 35,000. We couldn't hear each other because our lips moving. We couldn't hear the band or each other. It was pandemonium. We remained friends for years. He and I both have a daughter named Tracy. They're born a year apart. So for a while, they went to each other's birthday party. And then Ricky and I kind of drifted apart. And he became Rick Nelson, and I became a suburban father. But he was a wonderful guy. He had I said in the book, He was a contradiction, Randy. He was a shy clown.
Really?
He had a very sharp, a very barbed wit. I think got time for 2 more Ricky Nelson
Go
stories.
right at it.
So I had I came back after the Preps left the show, and for another 2 or 3 seasons was a regular as Ricky's roommate and friend and so forth. And I started to develop a little bald spot in the back of my head. So our makeup man would take some spray, some brown colored hairspray, and spray it on the back of my head. So we're doing one scene where I'm sitting down and Rick is standing behind me with 2 gorgeous girl extras, one on each arm. And he looks at us and says, "Well, Bruce, what'd you do? Fall asleep under an exhaust pipe?" This was not a confidence builder with the 2.
Of course not.
And when Ozzy wasn't on camera, it's not uncommon with some actors. He had a lot of twitches and blinks and the whole thing. Well, he would stand in front of us, giving us the scene, direct. Okay, here's what you come in, you say this, you do this, okay. And as he turned around and headed up to get behind the camera, Ricky would come around in front of us and do every single tick that Ozzy did. Perfect. I mean, uncanny. Didn't miss a twitch. And of course, we'd all break up. Ozzy would swing around. What's so funny? And never did find out. But Ricky was a jokester. He was a prankster, and he had an interesting sense of humor. He was like Harriet. You know, Harriet was really a woman of the world before she met Ozzy. She was a Cotton Club dancer, already once divorced Cotton Club dancer. When she met him, and she had a barbed wit like that. You know, she could trade blows very good in slightly bawdy, cutting kind of humor. So that's the part of America's favorite mother that people don't know is Harriet had a saucy wit about her.
I don't know. I mean, you mentioned in the book, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys worked some with the Wrecking Crew, right?
Yeah.
So I know James Burton was part of the Wrecking Crew, who he was
I didn't
on.
know that.
Yeah, he was on the Ozzy and Harriet show with Ricky some.
He started out with Ricky. Ricky heard him and brought him in town, and the minute Elvis heard him, Mickey hired him. Elvis hired him away from. Yeah, there was always a little kind of,
competition there.
Yeah. But I never experienced James Burton in the Wrecking Crew. It was Ray Pullman, it was Hal Blaine, it was Al DeLore, it was Carol Kay, it was Paz Johnson, it was Nino Tempo.
Wow.
Those are the guys that I knew, the real diehard first responders. Any session we had, man, they were there. And spirit and energy. Hal Blaine is like no other drummer ever in the world.
Yep.
An amazing guy with energy to burn. They were a great bunch of guys. They really were great. And girls, I must not forget Carol Kay.
Carol, oh my gosh, what a bass player, man.
You know that Down by the Station was the first top 40 record to have a Fender bass?
I saw that in the book. Yeah. I mean, that was wow. And Elvis, going back to Elvis, he would introduce Jerry Sheff and say on the Fender bass, it was always, it wasn't Gibson bass. It wasn't any other, it was Fender bass. You had to say it that way.
And it's so funny, Randy, if you see old tapes of Bill Haley and the Comets, rock around the clock and they go boom, boom, boom with their big acoustic bass. Like
stand-up bass.
Rocking out on that bass.
That's right. That's right. Well, speaking of Wrecking Crew too, somebody else you had a dealing with was Glenn Campbell. He was in the Wrecking Crew. Tell Glenn Campbell, or I don't want you to give away the whole book, but maybe some insights into Glenn.
He was a really special guy. And at one point I decided I was going to write, I loved Roger Miller's songs, his kind of funny, sarcastic use of words and so forth. Mm-hmm. So I wrote some Glenn Miller songs that I wanted to make a demo of, and I knew Glenn. He wasn't Glenn Campbell the star yet. He was the #1 guitar player in Union days, but that was it. And we met at Gold Star Recording Studio to do a couple of demos. Call the doctor, call the nurse, things are going from bad to worse, and I may not recover from a last attack of love.
Yep.
Glenn loved it. We were cracking up. She's wholesome, winsome, and then some. So we made four demos in about an hour. We became the LA version of the Everly Brothers. I mean, he was such a natural musician. I worked on sessions with him, but someone's telling him what to play on what song. I sang the song through once, and he went a third above me in perfect Everly Brothers harmony. My wife keeps getting on my case because somewhere in my archives in my storeroom are the 78 demos of Glenn Campbell and I singing those country songs. I got to find them one of these days. But it
Yeah.
was so much joy. It wasn't whether it was time pressure and a producer in the booth. We were just two guys at Gold Star paying 25 an hour to record some songs. And then we went up the street afterwards and went to a restaurant on Vine Street, right down from Sunset, with an outdoor patio. And we sat down and started to have lunch, and all the girls came walking by. I'm embarrassed now. My daughters would disown me, but we're making all these terrible, junior high cracks about the girls as they walk by. And here's Glenn Campbell. We're sitting out in the patio, and suddenly the sunlight hits him just right. And I'm looking at this, golden lock of hair and these eyes and this dimpled chin. I'm thinking, oh my God, the world's going to find this guy. He is going to be huge. That was the last really kind of intimate one-on-one, experience I had with Glenn. He went on then after that to become the great star that he was, and we'd see each other from time to time. But right from the get, the first time I walked in the session and heard him warming up, everybody said, hey, got this new kid on the session from Arkansas. You heard about this new guy, Glenn? I walked in, and guitar players, when they sit down, they warm up. He did everything. I thought it was at a faster speed. It was clean and intricate. I thought, oh my God, who is this guy? So before even meeting him, knowing his name, I heard him play that guitar. And I thought, yeah.
you struck gold with that one.
Woo!
Now there was there's a little bit of a Beatles story that you tell in there about the you know where I'm going with this. The letter to the Beatles. That's funny. I don't want to give away the book again, but boy, how heady that had to be. I've got some associations with people that are close to Paul and Ringo. All right. So I don't know either one of them. I've only met Ringo one time. I know people that worked with the Beatles, all that kind of stuff. So, I've had that, but so for me, just as a fan, I'm not a musician. I might play a mean air guitar and that's about it. But just having that kind of association was kind of a big deal to me. But I can imagine you guys getting called by, or your management getting called by Brian Epstein and kind of getting your clock rung a little bit there, and I don't want to give it away because I want people to buy your book, but how did that, you probably were unnerved in the beginning, but now looking back on it, you got to admit, there's got to be a certain amount of pride that you kind of came across their radar way back then. Did you not?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, for starters, let the record show, I am absolutely, Randy, I'm totally convinced Beatles never heard the song.
Really?
As edgy as John Lennon was, as much a spirit of fun as McCartney had, I think they would have thought it was funny as a crutch. But management gets panicked. And the thing that was so significant to me, to make this a long story somewhat shorter for those that don't know, we wrote a satire song about the Beatles marketing phenomenon, Beatlemania, and how they charged for fan club cars and autograph pictures. And their management didn't like it, called the tower and said, you got to withdraw the Four Preps record, kidding Beatlemania, and Capitol withdrew the record. That was our last chart record, really spelled the end of the group. But I'm convinced they didn't hear it. I know what happened. The Capitol already on this side of the pond was excited about the Beatles. They could smell what was going on. I naively, I think I said it sarcastically. I didn't really believe it. But when the conflict came up, I said, well, certainly they're going to side with us. We've been with them 13 years. The Beatles are brand new to the... Yeah, right, Bruce. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. Boy singer, grow up. So, it was crazy. They issued cease and desist orders to radio stations to stop playing the record immediately, to withdraw it from all the retail outlets. And as you know in the book, if you read, I got a letter from a woman who was the secretary at the Sydney, Australia Capitol pressing plant, who came back from lunch one day with all her girlfriends in the secretarial pool and were handed sledgehammers and went downstairs to the basement of the warehouse where there were 2,045 records of the dreaded forbidden letter to the Beatles, and they smashed them all to smithereens. And she was writing me with tears in her eyes saying, we loved you guys. We were very big in Australia. We loved you guys. And I snuck a 45 record out. If you'd like me to send it to you, I could do that.
Wow.
I thanked her. Yeah, that really was quite a turning point. And it felt a little bit like betrayal is too strong a word, but a disappointment from our record label. I wish
Yeah.
they could have worked something out.
Well, one other person I'll mention, because I actually interviewed this guy, and you worked with him. You helped with his career, and that was Steve March Torme. I got to interview him a couple years ago, or I guess it's going on 2 years ago. Had a good takeoff with him, and helped launch his career. Did you not?
Well, yeah, I guess you could say that. I was producing the Name That Tune. People are listening. How the hell they produce television? I thought he was a singer. It's all in the book.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I mean, the moment I heard him, whoa. And of course, who was the girl singer was Kathy Lee Gifford, who was
Yep.
Kathy Lee Johnson at the time. But
Yep.
I didn't know Steve all that well, but he had a wonderful voice. When he did our show, as you may know, he called himself Steve March. He did not want to identify with the dormant. His reasons I don't know, but that was quite specific from him. I and a lot of other people started to convince him, "You've got a great DNA, buddy. You're silly if you don't let the world know what your chops came from."
Yep.
So he started to do Steve March, Stormy. Well, I like his dad. I mean, his dad was the most impeccable singer in the world, and he was just a hell of a talent, a great guy, a lot of fun, a lot of spirit, and it brought Name That Tune. If I had to not be able to sing and write songs, at least if I had to produce TV shows to pay the bills, I was producing one that had to do with music,
There
with
you
a
go.
great 20-piece band and great singers. I mean,
Yep.
and the contestants, all of whom are passionate music lovers.
Mhm.
So that was how I met Steve, and I think the world of him. He's a wonderful talent.
Yep. Yep. Big sports fan too, as I remember. So
Yeah.
fun.
Well, you
Well,
already did your homework, buddy.
I tried. I try. I have my moments. So, but man, I can't wait for I've got the PDF copy of the book, but I told Bob when we were talking and setting this thing up with you, I can't wait for the hard copy to come out, and I want to be able. I'll go through Bob on this, but I would love to get a hard copy in your hands for you to sign for me, and I'll pay to have it shipped back to me. But I'd really love to have that, because the book is just. I was scrolling on my computer to read it, but figuratively speaking, a real page turner. And I kept telling myself, I want to get back and read this more slowly and not have to skim so quickly, because it's fascinating. I love all that stuff. I mean, like you said, the Forrest Gump of entertainment there. You're at some key points that I remember, and so that was just fun to see that, and to meet a man that had a lot to do with those sounds and times and visions and all that kind of stuff. So I'm grateful to Bob Merlis for making this happen, man. It was a lot of fun, and
Yeah, it's a good association. I just met Bob the first time about 3 weeks ago, but the minute I asked around about Bob Merlis, somebody said, "Oh yeah, yeah."
heavy hitter.
Phone calls, and he does a hell of a job. And he's introducing me to people like you. I might not have met you without Merlis.
Well,
He's got your address, I'm sure, so I will get
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'll get
Okay,
that.
the hard copy's on the way, buddy.
No, I sure appreciate it. And you know what, Bruce, anytime you've got anything new going on, do you want to get the word out? Go. I want to obey and follow the right channels, especially if Bob's involved. But just know that my door is always open to you, man. This is fun stuff, and I'm always open to hear the stories, man. So,
oh, great. Oh, this has been fun, man. Let's stay in touch. It's a good idea.
Likewise, let's do it, and stay safe. And I look forward to hearing more great things from you.
Thank you. Thank you, Randy.
Take care, Bruce.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.